Student loans. Debt is at an all-time high. It's almost impossible to get out of it. So what can be done? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Student loan debt in America is at an all-time high. 44 million people owe almost $1.5 trillion to the federal government. That amount has increased by more than 350% since 2003. I'm happy to say I'm responsible for my own small chunk of that. The student loan crisis is a hot topic of conversation for political candidates. And in an effort to combat the crisis, the Trump administration has announced reforms to higher education that will impact student loans. So, just how deep does the issue of student loan debt go? Well, first we have to understand how the loans work, because if people did, there probably wouldn't be $1.5 trillion of debt. There are subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans. With a subsidized loan, the government will help you pay off the interest while you are still enrolled in school. These loans are typically offered to students who have financial needs. Unsubsidized loans are available to students regardless of financial need, and interest will grow as long as the loan exists. According to the Pew Research Center, about 4 in 10 adults under the age of 30 have student loan debt. The average new college graduate owes about $37,000 in student loans, and for law and medical school graduates, that number is closer to $200,000. Let's just say my student loans for my master's degree at New York University is somewhere in between. At least I'm not alone, though, because it turns out New York is one of 4 states with the highest amount of student loan debt. The others are California, Florida, and Texas. And people in those states owe more than $340 billion in student loan debt. That's more than the entire gross domestic product of Singapore. Now I understand why millennials are drowning all their sorrows in avocado toast. How are you supposed to buy a house in the future, you big baby? Well, it's funny I should ask, because there's one kind of debt in America that's even higher than student loan debt: home mortgage loans. But the difference is, by the time you're done paying off your mortgage loan, you own the house. But by the time you're done paying off student loans, you've already squandered your education. Like if you took out loans to get a master's degree in classical music composition and then did something totally unrelated as a career. And it turns out that student loan debt has played a role in the decline of home ownership. More and more young adults who have jobs are living with their parents. Ideally, student loans help you pay for your education, finish college with a degree, and then get a job. The money you make from that job will help you pay back those loans, including interest. At least that's what we were all told. But there are a few problems. First, the cost of attending college is also at an all-time high. The average cost of attending a 4-year institution is now $104,000. Compare that to getting a 4-year degree in 1989 at half the price, and that's after adjusting for inflation. So as the price of tuition goes up, so does the cost of borrowing money to pay for that tuition. Another problem is that student loan debt is rising faster than wages. And to make matters worse, according to Bloomberg, student loan debt has just been going up and up since the Great Recession of 2008. It's now up more than 150%. Oh, and the interest is growing just as fast, too. For example, if your student loan interest rate is 5% and you're not repaying it, the amount you owe will double in 14 years. I'm finding this out the hard way. It's no wonder that 20% of borrowers are behind on their student loan payments. But Chris, you say, can't I just declare bankruptcy to get out of my student loan debt? Unfortunately, no. It's the one type of debt that Congress has decided you can't get out of through declaring bankruptcy. The good news is, there's another option. You could die. And if that doesn't sound appealing, you could also try getting totally and permanently disabled. FYI, that only applies to federal student loans. But otherwise, it's really hard to get out of student loan debt, except by paying it off. On the plus side, it's really easy to get into student loan debt. Lenders will offer student loans to pretty much anyone willing to take one. And for a student who's short on money for a semester, it may seem enticing to get a few $1,000 and blow it on the fanciest avocado toast and bottomless mimosa brunches and, I guess, textbooks or whatever. But this recklessness of handing out loans is exactly why some states have gone so far as to require universities to definitively make sure students know what they're getting into. It's also why the White House has decided to step in and reform higher education. Last month, the White House released proposals to reform the Higher Education Act. This act was originally signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson in 1965. Its purpose was to strengthen the educational resources of colleges and provide financial aid for students in higher education. The last time the Higher Education Act was significantly amended was in 2008, so why change it now? The White House wants to reform the Education Act to encourage responsible borrowing and simplify student aid. More specifically, it wants to establish common-sense limits on federal student loans and require institutions to improve their financial aid guidance for students. The limits would be groundbreaking because the current system allows students to take out a pretty much unlimited amount of student loans. And the universities haven't been complaining about these massive loans because the more students go into debt, the more money flows into university coffers, regardless of whether those students graduate or if they're able to repay their loans. That's why the White House thinks universities should also bear some of the blame for the student loan crisis. It's unclear if, how, and when these proposals may be put in front of Congress. However, in September, a bipartisan bill that was passed in the House promised to enhance financial counseling for students. Unfortunately, it's been sitting in the Senate Committee for Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. Hey, I know someone who's in that committee. Which reminds me, the 2020 presidential election is in a year and a half, and the horse race has already begun. I know, it's already time to do this whole thing over again. In this election, student loan debt is fresh in the minds of the candidates. Cory Booker wants to forgive student loan debt of public school teachers. Elizabeth Warren wants to cut the student loan burden. Don't we all? Kamala Harris wants to protect students from deceptive for-profit colleges. Kirsten Gillibrand wants to refinance federal student loan debt at low interest rates. Andrew Yang wants to immediately reduce student loan payments and change the bankruptcy laws. And Bernie Sanders wants to simply make college free. All of it, free of charge. And if you think that sounds good, watch my video, Should College Be Free? Now before you say, fake news, why didn't you include a Republican proposal to cut student loans? That's because none of the one people running against Trump have talked about it. As for Trump himself, as president, he's already trying to reform education by capping the amount students can borrow, simplifying the repayment options, and adding an option to forgive some unpaid loans after 15 years. So, most Democratic candidates want to fix the student loan problem, and Trump wants to fix the student loan problem also. Which means we can all at least agree on one thing. Having student loan debt really sucks. Because if there's one thing I could say to my student loan, it would be, thanks for everything. How could I ever repay you? So what do you think about the student loan crisis? Leave your comments below. And remember, America Uncovered is funded by viewers like you. We can't make content like this without your help. So I want to give thanks to those of you who contribute to America Uncovered through Patreon by answering one of your questions. Paul Carter asks, my father rants a lot about how we're spending billions of dollars to defend foreign countries with little in return. He feels that most of America's resources should be pulled out of these countries to support domestic issues here in the U.S. And while I agree that domestic issues like border security is a significant problem, I disagree that we should leave lesser countries to their own devices, like countries in the Middle East. I'm bad at explaining things, but maybe you can shed some light on the subject. Good question, Paul. Many Republican and Democratic candidates over the years talked during their campaigns about how America should really not be getting so involved in foreign countries. But when they actually become president, their actions don't seem to reflect that. Remember how Obama claimed he would pull troops out of Afghanistan, or how Trump said he wanted to focus on America first. The problem is, international politics is complicated. For example, the Trump administration recently announced a $60 billion fund to invest in Africa. Why should America spend so much money? Because if America doesn't do it, China will regardless. And remember, China is ruled by a brutal authoritarian regime that is constantly murdering its own citizens. It would be incredibly dangerous for China to be the dominant power in Africa. Imagine if the politics of 54 African countries voting in the United Nations all side with the Chinese regime on issues like security, trade, and internet freedom. Those issues affect everybody, including U.S. citizens. So sometimes the U.S. has no choice but to get involved in international affairs to protect the best interests of Americans. Unfortunately, it's always complicated and always comes at a cost. Thanks for your question, Paul. And thank you for supporting America Uncovered with $1 or more per episode through the crowdfunding website Patreon. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.